I'm going to go ahead and start with lesson 2. For lesson 2, we're going to be doing add and subtract real numbers. We're going to look at integers, decimals, fractions, and mixed numbers. So let's start with the first one. You have a -5 and a +8. So these are integers. Integers are positive and negative numbers. When you have a -5, think of that of a number that you're losing it. So imagine I owe $5 and I got $8. So if I combine both together, that means that I still have $3. Okay, let's do another example. Let's say I have -2 and plus a -10. Alright, so if I were to think of it like money, I owe somebody $2, and then somebody came along and said, you know what, you still owe me $10. So combined, I owe them together $12. So that's how I get a -12. Okay. Now you can also do this in the calculator. So if I look at the first example, I can go ahead and put a -5. Okay, and you want to use the negative first, because if numbers here are negative, or you have a number that starts with a negative, you use this symbol right here. This means to add a negative, so it'd be -5, and then I'm going to go ahead and just put +8, and I would press enter. So that's one way you guys can use the calculators to solve it. Alright, now you have here a -2 plus a -10. So again, you want to press -2, so that's a -2, and then I'm going to go ahead and add, and I'm going to put parentheses because this represents a -10, and inside I have a -10. Okay, press enter and I get a -12. So you can use the calculator to help you solve the problem. Okay, alright, so let's move on. So now let's go on to another example. So let's say I have 5.4 plus 8.3. Okay, and I want to add these two numbers. Okay, so 5.4 plus 8.3. So again, you want to, in this situation, you want to use your calculator. So we're going to go ahead and take out your calculator, and we're going to go ahead and add these two numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this. Alright, and we're going to add 5.4 plus 8.3, and we get 13.7. So we're going to go ahead and write down 13.7. Okay, alright, let's now look at a negative decimal and a positive decimal. So we're going to use our calculator. Again, this is a negative, which means we use our negative symbol here, negative, and it will be 2.7. Oh, I'm sorry, 2.6, and positive 7.8. So that is going to add up to 5.2. So that would be our answer. So this would be 5.2. Okay. All right. Let's look at fractions. For fractions, we have 3/4 plus 5/4. All right. When we add fractions, what we want is for the denominators to be the same. On this example, they're all in fourths, so that makes it easy because now you have 3 plus 5. So we add the numerators together. So we're going to add that 3 and the 5 together, so we end up with 8/4. Well, 8/4 can be reduced to 2. Okay, now we have this 2 plus 7/8. So we need to change this, and the way we're going to change this is by keeping the same denominator, both numbers. Well, this has an 8, and that means that I'm going to need another 8 on this side over here. So that means what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this number by the denominator. Okay, but remember, 2 is the same as 2/1. So that means to have the same denominator, I need to multiply 8 on both the numerator and denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 8. So this would be 8 times 2, and I'm going to multiply 8 times 1. So if I rewrite this, I'm going to end up with 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 1 is 8. Plus 7/8. Alright, so now we have the same denominator. We're going to do the same process we did over here. So we're going to leave the 8 by itself, so that means we're going to have an 8 on the bottom. And then we're going to add 16 plus 7, which is going to be 23. Now we can't reduce this anymore, so that would be our final answer. Okay, now let's look at another example here. Let's right underneath. Let's do this here. Let's do a value of -2/5 and 3/4. Okay? Alright, again, notice that we don't have the same denominator. So we need to change this denominator and this denominator to be the same. So there's nothing common between these two. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and multiply the denominator from the from this side and put it over here. So that means I can go ahead and multiply this side by 5, and this side by 5. Okay. On this side over here, I can go ahead and multiply the value of 4 on both sides. So that means I can multiply this side by 4 and this side by 4. So now what I end up having is the same denominator. 5 times 4 is 20, so I have a 20 here. Okay, now you have a negative, so we're going to keep a negative here. It doesn't matter where you leave it as long as you have a negative. And then you have 2 times 4, well, that's an 8. Okay, alright, now for this one here, this is a positive, so we're going to write 3 times 5 is 15. And for, again, this is going to be 20. And now we have the same denominator, we can go ahead and simplify that. So we have negative 8 plus 15. Again, think of you owe somebody $8 and you got $15. That means that there's a difference of a positive 7. You still have $7. So 7 over the denominator, which is going to be 20. So it'd be a value of 7 over 20 because it is positive, so I won't put a negative in front. Now you can also do this in the calculator. So if I go back to my calculator, let me put this over here. If I go to my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and clear this. And let's do a couple of these examples. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this in the calculator. 3/5. So let me erase this right here so you guys can see that. And I'll erase this right here. So let's go ahead and start with the first one here. So what we'll do is we'll do 3/5. So we're going to go ahead and add, I'm sorry, 3/5. 3/4 plus 5/4. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first one. So that means if we're going to do this, we need to put parentheses around it. So I'm going to put a parentheses, and then we're going to put 3 divided by 4. Okay, and then we're going to add, and then again I want to add and then put another parenthesis. So I'm going to go ahead and put a parenthesis of 5 divided by 4. Okay, so we add that together and we end up with 2. So there's our answer. Okay, alright, now let's look at the second one here. The second one here that we have is 2 plus 7/8. Again, you can do this in the calculator. So what you're going to do is you're going to put 2 plus, put a parenthesis, and you're going to put 7 over 8. Alright, notice that we get a decimal, and we didn't get a decimal here, although this is the same answer. 23 over 8 is 2.875. So how can we get the 2.875 to this value of 23 over 8? The way you do that is you're going to go and click on math, and then you're going to select the first one. So so that means all you have to do is the number 1 represents frac means fraction, so it's math frac. So we're going to go ahead and click math, which we're already here, and then since it's already on 1, just press enter. So it's going to be math enter. And so once you take your answer and press math enter, you're going to get the fraction value of 2.875. So we press enter and we get 23 over 8. Alright, let's go to the last example right here. So if you look at the last one, you had a fraction of, and I'm going to go ahead and put a parentheses, and now this is a negative 2/5. So I'm going to put negative 2 divided by 5. Again, I put the symbol of the negative, which is this one, not the minus. So we're going to go ahead and put that plus parentheses, and we're going to put 3 over 4. Press enter. Notice that we get a decimal, but there is a way to change that. The way you do that is you're going to press math enter, and then now you have your answer to convert to fraction, and you just press enter one more time and you get 7 over 20, which is our answer right here. Okay, alright, moving on. Let's go ahead and move on to a couple more examples. So let's go now to mixed numbers. So let's try a couple of these right here. So for mixed numbers, we're going to go ahead and try the following. We're going to try 2 and 3 over 4, 3/4, 2 and 3/4, and we're going to go ahead and add 1 and 1/4. Alright, mixed numbers, there's a few ways to do this. Okay, the easiest way, I guess, to do this is to change this this fraction. So the way you do that is you're going to multiply 2 times 4. So you're going to multiply the denominator times its value, the 2, the whole number, and then we're going to add the value of 3. So that means that if I rewrite this, it's going to be 4 on the bottom, and then 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for this fraction. We're going to multiply 1 times 4 and add a 1. So we're going to multiply 4 times 1, so this becomes 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so this is really 5 over 4. So now we got the same thing we have over here. So we have 11 over 4 plus 5 over 4. If we add those together, you get 16 over 4. Well, 16 over 4 is going to equal to 4. Is there a way to do this in the calculator? Not with mixed numbers. What you want to do is change the mixed numbers into a fraction like this. So you want to convert it by multiplying the denominator with the whole number and adding the numerator. Get it to these values, and then you can go ahead and plug it in the calculator and do the same thing we did over here. Okay, so one of the rules here when we're doing adding and subtracting fractions is you must have a common denominator. So we must have a common denominator. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So we're going to start with integers. So let's try the following. Alright, so here you have the following. You have negative 10 minus 7. So you have this scenario where you owe somebody $10 and you owe another person $7, which means that combined both, you owe them $17. Okay, now if I were to look at this as a with the calculator, okay, so that means that I would go ahead and put the negative, so that means I'm going to use this symbol because the number in front is a negative, negative 10. But after that, you're going to use this number represents the minus, so it's negative 10 minus 7. Okay, so anything after the first number, anything in between, and there's no other additional symbols in front of that number except this right here, that means you're going to use the minus. Okay, so it's going to be negative 10 minus 7, so we enter and we get negative 17. Alright, let's look at the next example here. So you have a negative 6 minus a negative 9. So what you have here is a double minus a negative 9. It's like saying I will not go to a show, which means that you actually do go to the show because you're using a double negative. So we are going to rewrite this, and a lot of you know what to do here. One of the things you can do is just go ahead and change the negative with the minus with a negative 9. The negative times the negative turns it into a positive, so you can just go ahead and change the symbol there. And so what you have here is a negative 6 plus a 9, and we go ahead and use the calculator there. So we're going to put a negative 6 plus a 9, and we end up with a 3. So negative 6 plus 9 is 3. So we're going to go ahead and write down, oops, my mistake there, that's not negative, it's going to be positive 3. Okay, alright, let's look at decimals. 5 minus 7.2. So again, you have $5 but you owe somebody $7.20. So we can subtract that and get the value. You subtract that just by looking at it, it's going to be negative 2.2. Okay, you can also do this in the calculator and plug in 5 minus 7.2. So let's just do that real quick. So this is just regular something you've already know how to do. You're going to go 5 minus 7.2. There's your negative 2.2. Okay, alright, another example. Let's say we have the following. Let's do 6 minus a negative 9.5. Okay, so that's a negative right there. So 6 minus a negative 9.5. Again, a negative and a negative is going to turn into a positive. So really we can view this as a 6 plus a 9.5. And we can add those together into a calculator, and this is going to equal to 15.5. Alright, next one, fractions. Again, The common thing here is that if we're doing fractions, the rule here is that you must have a common denominator. So here you have a 7 and a 7, so you do have a common denominator. So that means all we have to do is leave the common denominator of 7, and then we're going to go ahead and subtract the 3 minus 5. So again, if you have $3 and you owe somebody $5, so that means you owe more, so that ends up being a -2. If we're going to do this in the calculator, we're going to go ahead and write down a parentheses. Make sure you put a parentheses, 3/7, 3/7, and then we're going to go ahead and subtract, because remember, we're going to go ahead and subtract this value of 5/7. Okay, we press enter. Again, this does not give us the fraction, but the way to change that is you press math, press enter, and then press enter, and you change that to a -2 into the fractional form. All right, let's do one more example here. Let's do -2/5 minus 5/3. Alright, we do not have a common denominator, but what we can do is to come up with a common denominator by multiplying the denominators against each other. So that means that the 3 here, okay, we can use that to multiply it with the 5 and the 2. The 5 over here, we'll multiply it with the 5 and the 3 over here. So let's go ahead and start with that. So we'll start with 5. We're going to multiply the 5 on this side. We're going to multiply this side by 5, the numerator, and we're going to multiply the denominator by 5. Okay. On this side, we're going to multiply the 2 by the 3 and the 5 with the 3. And this is how we're going to get our common denominator. So we're going to get a value of -2 times 3 is -6. 5 times 3 is over 15. Minus 5 times 5 is 25 over 15. So now we have our common denominator. We leave our denominator alone, and then we have -6 minus 25. Okay, again, you're combining these two negatives. You owe these two people money, so that means together you owe them $31. So our final answer is -31 over 15. All right, mixed numbers. So you have a 2 minus a minus 3 and 7/8. Again, you have a double negative, so that means that this will be a positive. So really, this is just 2 plus 3 and 7/8. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to change this 3 and 7/8 by multiplying 3 times 8 and adding the 7. So we're going to rewrite all this, and we're going to end up with 2 plus 3 times 8 is 24. 24 plus 7 is 31 over 8. Okay, all right, 31 over 8. And again, this has a 2. Again, no common denominator, but this is the same as 2 over 1. So 2 over 1, and to get a value of 8 on both sides, that means I need to multiply the 2 over 1 by 8. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this side by 8 and the bottom part by 8. And now I can rewrite this as 8 times 2 is 16, and 8 times 1 is 8, and we have a plus 31 over 8. Now we can add 31 plus the 16. 31 plus 16 is going to give us 47 over 8. Okay. Now on mixed numbers, you can't do this in the calculator. You would have to change this to really what you have here, 2 plus 31 over 8. Then we'll plug it in. You're going to get a value as a decimal, but click math, enter, enter, and you end up with your fractional value of 47 over 8. Alright, so go ahead and try these problems. Add these right here, -10 minus 7.4, 4 9s minus a -3/4. Add those into the last page of your notes. Try those out. Go ahead, when you're done, pause the video and I'll show you the answers to this. Okay, here are the answers.